Just to you, sorry.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. So this is Saul Saila
Yeah.
from Hope Valley, Rhode Island. Born and brought up here, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about where you were born and brought up.
Well, I was born actually in Providence. I guess my mother had some difficulty in extracting me, and ever since that time I've lived in the same house we're in now, namely 317 Switch Road. And I did leave. I joined the Army, and after that my graduate school was at Cornell, and I spent about 12 years away from Rhode Island, in New York and Indiana mostly.
You came back here and worked.
And then I came back here and worked for the state of Rhode Island for a while before being asked to join the university.
In your field at the university?
Actually, I was at the Graduate School of Oceanography on the Bay campus.
Okay, well, we have so much to talk about, Saul, but I started to ask you about the Polish people that have come to Hope Valley, so we'll start with that too.
All right.
What do you know about that?
Well, I know that the school bus that I took to the school in Wyoming at that time, which was a two-room schoolhouse, was full of Polish kids who got on the bus at a stop at by the dam in Hope Valley now. And these were the children of parents who apparently worked in the woolen mill that was operating at that time. And I believe that most of them actually were working in the mill. And many of the children who started school wound up leaving school at 16 and joining the workforce.
Do you know why their parents left Poland?
No, I don't. I did not find that out. They were already here. Some of them, I think our family became friendly with one group, or one family, the Habreks, who have a farm not very far from our home. And since that time, we've been friendly with them. We knew Sam Habrek, who was the father of 3 boys who now are farming the same land.
And your earliest memories of Hope Valley?
Well, yes, I think the most impressive thing to me was the fact that there was a railway going into Hope Valley, and it stopped. Its terminus was a grain mill run by the Rawlings family, and we used to buy our chicken feed and cattle feed there, and it was always fun to visit there.
Did you ever ride the train?
Yes, we used to sort of sneak a little ride on it, and it seemed to run at fairly regular intervals between Hope Valley and Wood River Junction. And my friend, his name was Robert Perkins, lived in Woodville, and we would be fishing near the bridge trestle, and sometimes we'd hop aboard.
That's terrific. And would you just jump on the? They didn't have passengers in, but it just
no,
carry the cargo.
Yes, where they carried the Congo, actually an open door. If we, we had to find something like that. My father used to get a free pass as a passenger on this train, I think it was sort of an advertising scheme by the Rawlings. Also, I remember that at that time, the chicken feed that we bought was called World Record chicken feed, because they had apparently, in cooperation with the university, developed a chicken mash that produced lots of eggs, or good growth, I guess.
Would it be blended there in Hope Valley? Would they?
Yes, yes. The blending, the milling was done there, and sometimes the air was quite dusty.
Do you remember
And
the
I
fire?
remember a chute that the grain bags would fall down when we purchased the grain there. I do not remember details of the fire at all.
You probably were not here. I think it was like
Yeah.
1946 or 7.
Yeah, and at that time I was either in the army or possibly out of the state. At least as I said, I certainly would have remembered that had I been in Rhode Island at that time, because that was a big disaster.
And after that, the train stopped.
That's correct. And in fact, it was my understanding that the railway tracks were removed as material for building tanks, or whatever. The steel was taken and remelted.
You remember about your parents ever riding the train? Did they use the train?
No, they didn't. They bought the grain, but my father never rode the train.
Didn't
No.
use his pass.
No, didn't use his pass.
Did you know any of the people that worked on the train, the engineer?
No, I just knew a Mr. Reach Schofield, who was a sort of the manager of the grain mill. And I have one very interesting story to tell. My father was an acrobat in his youth, and he was a very strong man. And one of the things he did was he used to pick up a grain bag and hold it in his teeth, a 100-pound bag. And that was one of the acts that he did in the circus and vaudeville. He used to do a handstand on flying rings and hold a man by a bit in his teeth.
And I remember he also did something called head-to-head.
Oh yes, they did a head-to-head stand. My father's partner would do a headstand while my father was usually the bass man.
He would balance on his head.
Yeah, and balance on his head, And
tell us a little bit about the Finnish population in Richmond and Hope.
the Finnish population was not as aggregated as the Polish people were. The Finnish people, most of them always were found near water, and that was because they had saunas or built saunas before they built the house, and the water was a necessary part of the sauna business. Namely, you go take a dip in the river or in the pond after the sauna.
Why did the Finnish people come to Hope Valley, to Richmond?
I know my parents came. They visited a friend in Coventry, a Finnish man, and he said there was a place for sale in Hope Valley. And they looked at it and liked it, and thought that that'd be a good place for sort of a summer cottage. Well, my father then went on tour, and my mother stayed at the house, which was only partly constructed at that time, and she liked it. And that's how then my father started, after he retired from the acrobatics. You could do that only until a certain age, and then you start going down, and my father didn't like the idea that he was no longer able to do what he did as a younger man, and he quit. And he worked in the mill, and he also became a carpenter. And he was a carpenter primarily because he was so strong that when they had to shingle church steeples, for example, he could hang on with one hand and do the steeple work, and from there he did a lot of construction work, then working for a family by the name of Link in Charlestown. He was a contractor.
When you went to school, you went to Richmond Elementary School?
I went to, the first school was the Wyoming. It was a two-room schoolhouse that is now located, that was located exactly where the, I guess the part of the Richmond, whatever you want to call it, the mall there.
Oh, really? Where the job lot is and the other?
No, on the other side of the road. It's where the Cumberland Farms is.
Oh, okay. That's where the school was.
That's where the school was. Yes. And it had two rooms, and that's where I started school. And I know that it was a little difficult for me. I didn't speak any English at that time, and I guess the kids were a little bit, they pick on somebody who's a little different. And my mother got her friends. Some of them were domestics, and they got a lot of used clothes, and I wore them, and one of the kinds of clothes I wore were short pants, and all the Polish kids had knickers, and so I was sort of ostracized for wearing short pants. At least they made a joke of it, and that sort of annoyed me and embarrassed me a bit.
Was there animosity between the Polish children and the other children in the school? Was there
no, there really wasn't, at least to my knowledge. It seemed to me the Polish children were a majority, at least in the first few years of my school.
Where did they live mostly?
They lived mostly right near the mill. There's a hill on the other side of the road from the mill, and there were essentially what I guess they call them factory houses, and they lived in these.
And where was the mill located?
The mill was right at the base of the falls there. There were two buildings. One was on right next to the falls, and the other building was below on the other side of the road.
There's several waterfalls, however, so I'm confused which waterfalls you
This
mean.
is the waterfall that's on Switch Road. It's a sort of a horseshoe-shaped fall.
In Wyoming, up here?
No, not in Wyoming,
not
but right when you go down Mechanic Street Hill.
Yeah.
When you're going down towards the high school?
Yeah, when you're going.
Oh, it's that one. Okay,
yeah, it's
yes.
that one,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that one, okay.
Yeah, and on the other side there's a little road that goes
Right.
up, and there's a housing development there,
That's
and
what
that's
it's
where
about.
virtually all of the Polish children
Right
came
in
from.
that area. Okay.
Right.
And they worked at, there was a mill over there on that side of the river too, right?
Well,
over
yeah,
there.
that was there, and I remember also that these houses were not very well equipped with running water, etc. And there was a big tub in the mill, and the kids and the adults, for that matter, used to take their baths in it.
In the mill.
In the mill, yeah.
Was that tub designed for that purpose, or was
I
it used
doubt
for
it. I
other-
think it was a dye vat or something
Dye
like
vat,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
Fascinating.
And that mill burned?
That mill burned, and no, that, actually, yes, I guess both of them burned, or part of them burned anyway. It used to be a woolen mill. They would reprocess wool and make blankets out of them, and I was told that they were making army blankets, the blankets for the army.
And did some of the Polish workers also work in the machine shop, the machine factory? Nichols Langworthy mill, where they made the big boilers? And
No, not that I know of.
Okay,
I
mostly
think
worked in the
they
fabric.
mostly worked in the fabric.
there was another mill called the Stone Mill. Was that located over there too?
I have not heard that term, stone mill, no.
Do you know Mr. Colazzi? John
Well,
Colazzi?
yes, I know the elder, Mr. Colazzi,
And his wife.
and his wife, and my family used to go there to eat and drink beer, and I became quite familiar with the place. And then, interestingly, Mr. Colazzi's daughter, Geraldine, became my first secretary at the University of Rhode Island.
Witala, right?
Yes, he's now Jerry Vitala, yes.
Did you go shopping in Depot Square?
In where?
Depot Square?
I don't know the term.
Oh, Depot Square is where the railroad ended. At the
Oh.
depot there behind which now the Hope Valley.
Oh
Fire
yeah,
Station.
there were two stores that we frequented, three actually. There was a Sherman's clothing store in that building where Mr. Woodmansey has his.
Oh, it was the clothing store was there.
Yeah, it was downstairs on there. There was a post office upstairs where his office is now. And there was a meat market that was owned by the father of Mr. Stanley, the police chief.
Mm.
And next to it was an A&P. And one of my Polish friends was a chap by the name of Edward Hoyinski,
Oh, okay.
and he was one of the few Polish kids who graduated from high school, and he worked in the A&P there, and then I guess also worked as assistant manager of the new one when it was built.
I remember Kowalski. I remember
Yeah.
the name. Yeah. And then at some point, I guess they built a brick building where the post office moved across the street to where Western Auto used to be.
Yeah, that's right. There was a post office there.
The post office over there. Did you ever go to any shows where Woodmansey is now? I guess upstairs they used to, it was the Oddfellows building, and they used to have.
We did not. My family went. The Finnish people are fairly active thespians, and we used to go attend plays in Voluntown. There was a Finnish tourist hall there.
What would plays be like?
Beg pardon?
What were those plays like?
Well, they were drama, for example. One of them I remember was a story about a log drive, and somebody was injured, I believe, in the log drive, and that was a story that I remembered.
And these were done in English?
Oh no, in Finnish.
In Finnish. So
Yes.
there was enough of a Finnish community to support a theater?
Yes, a small theater, and the Finnish people were aggregated somewhat in Connecticut, mostly chicken farmers. And those Finnish people around here were isolated more or less. There were a couple of Finnish families at Pasqueezet Pond in Charlestown, and
certainly around Beach Pond, right?
around Beach Pond there were a number of them, yes. And then we had one Finnish family in Westerly that we knew very well. They owned a commercial steam bath, the sauna, yeah. And they, I remember it was 25 cents a piece to go take a sauna there.
Do you remember what their name was?
Nurmi. It's the same as the famous Finnish runner Paavo Nurmi. His name was Atto Nurmi, N-U-R-M-I. That was the owner, and he had a son, Eugene Nurmi, who was a good friend of mine, and he wound up working for the Atomic Energy Commission in Tennessee.
So, do you still speak Finnish?
Oh yes, yes. Yeah.
Can you say,
Good day, or
well, I'm going to go to Depot Square to catch the train?
minä menen Hope Valleyin otan juna.
Could you say it one more time?
Minä menen Hope Valleyin ja sitten minä otan juna.
Thank you.
When we had Estonians visiting us 10 years, 15 years ago, Saul was able to communicate
Really?
pretty well with them.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
Estonian
Closely.
and Finnish are closely related. It's said that Hungarian is supposed to be a Finno-Ugric language. Well, I have not found any kind of correlation there. Looking at words, very primitive words like fire and water, they have very different sounding names in Hungarian.
Going to school in Wyoming, and then after school in Wyoming, you had to go to Westerly to school. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I went to high school in Westerly.
Did you
then.
take a bus there? Or-
Yes, from Woodrow Junction. I had to get to Woodrow Junction somehow, sometimes walking, sometimes my parents would take me, and sometimes I biked.
And I remember one time, it was 1938. What happened to you then?
Oh yeah, that was the time of the famous hurricane. And I guess I was in junior high school at that time, and we saw that the wind was blowing very, very strongly from the school, but the bus came anyway, and we got on the bus and we got about a half a mile toward Hope Valley, and the trees fell and the bus was stopped, and as I recall, we walked back to school, and then we started sort of organizing, and there was a Mr. Applin who was a teacher there, and he and the bigger kids like myself helped the younger children, and I walked then from the Richmond School to Hopkins, to Rockville, to bring some of the smaller kids. Then I walked from Rockville to my house, and I got home about midnight on that particular day. And our house had been badly damaged. We had lost our chimney and part of our roof, and my parents were waiting, wondering what had happened to me, and were very happy to see me.
But
And
you escorted some children home?
yeah, Mr. Applin, the teacher, walked all the way with me, and he obviously walked back again. And there were just a tangle of trees on the roads, and it was very difficult. And of course, after the hurricane, there was all kinds of work to clean up. And
Is there anything else that you would like to talk to us about Hope Valley? And,
no, I can't think of
you were born
anything.
in what, 1924?
24.
So in hurricane you were 14.
Yeah, that's right.
And in 1941 you went to war?
I joined the Army in 1942, it was. And when I was just started as a freshman at Purdue. And I wound up in the infantry ultimately, and wound
Trained
up
at the
in.
Citadel.
Oh yeah, in fact I was
Part of an elite corps, right?
it was we were being trained to become engineers actually, and then they pulled us out when the invasion took place, and I came into France through Marseille, and I got as far as the Maginot Line, and I got hit, and then I got spinal meningitis, and I was in the hospital for months, and that was the end of the end for me.
Maybe that saved your life.
Yes, I think it did. The mortality from what we were doing was high. We were in what was called an intelligence and reconnaissance platoon, and that meant we had to go behind the lines at night and see if we could hear where the Germans were, and it was not it was quite a bit of loss. So yeah, I feel very fortunate. I've been living on borrowed time for some time.
And living very well.
Yeah.
Well, if there's anything else that you'd like to say, Carla, do you have any questions?
No?
Okay.
Okay, good.
Super.
Thank you.
You're welcome.